Hey folks, happy Thursday and welcome to our newest edition of Scaling Up. We created this series to help educate real estate agents and help them hopefully scale their business up. For those of you that do not know me, I am Jack Hamilton. I am the team lead with the Hamilton Realty Group at EXP. I am a 32-year veteran of the real estate business with over 3,000 transactions. And I have, currently I'm an EXP certified mentor, but I have been in the coaching world for years with Mike Ferry to start back in the early 2000s, and then with his son Tom at Ferry International up until about a year ago. So as I said, the focus of this is to really help you as agents to improve your business and make it more efficient. Here at our company, we talk with our agents all the time about helping them to make more money with less time, less energy spent, and with systems. Our business is all about systems. And before I get started today, we're going to talk a little bit about buyer process and buyer consultation. And the reason I'm really bringing this up right now is, if you've been watching the news, there's been all kinds of information about the changing market out there, and it is changing. And in fact, please don't take offense to what I'm going to say right now if you're an agent out there. But really over the last 2 years, if you could smoke a mirror, you could sell a house. It was just, a frenzy. COVID created a whole new environment. And people were just desperate to find houses out there. And with the advent of internet and online leads, it was very, very simple. As long as you didn't do something crazy, that you were able to sell houses. But we're getting back to what we consider a more normal market, and it is in fact a time when folks like myself and our team, we are just ecstatic about the change. Because it does tend to have folks in the real estate business that get out that don't really know how to run it as a business. So again, that's the point of our Scaling Up series, is to help those of you out there that are serious about your business and growing your business to make it profitable and to make it more fun. So today, as I said, we're going to talk about a program that we use for buyer consultations. I'm going to give you some notes and some tips. But I'm also going to tell you that if you want this information, please just send us a note and we would be glad to send you a copy of the buyer consultation scripts that we use. But, when you're working with a buyer, you always have to be prepared for success. You have to have a positive mindset when you're working with them, because one of the things I talk about a lot too is I don't care whether it's a $50,000 purchase or a $5 million purchase. That consumer deserves expertise and knowledge in the market to help them to navigate the buying process as smoothly and as stress-free as possible. It's our job to take the stress away from them. So we always like to start with the mindset of a consultant, not a salesperson. We need to discover what their problems are, what their challenges are in finding a home, and help them. You'll often hear us say, Dana says this a lot of times, we're called real estate salespeople, but we're not really selling anything. I'm not going to convince a buyer to purchase a home that they don't want. So that is the thing, that you want to take that approach as a consultant. And you want to be the resource. You want to be resourceful in helping them solve their problem, which is buying a home. It is all about the knowledge and expertise of a market. People are going to work with you if you know the market, if you know the processes, and you can help them accomplish their goal. So we like to do presentations face-to-face. Again, let's face it, over the last few years with COVID, that has not happened. And a lot of us are now resorting to doing it either by Zoom or FaceTime, which is fine. But you want to make sure that you prepare your environment and your presentation before you get started, whether that's face-to-face or whether that is, meeting with them on Zoom. So you want to have all your paperwork together. I'm still old school. We have a checklist of questions that we like to ask, which helps us to learn more about them and to help them find a home. And, you know, the first tip I'll tell you, if you want them to feel like you are listening to them and you're concerned, you might actually want to write some notes down next to these questions when you ask them, because that makes them feel important. And also you want to repeat back to them, you know, what their answers were, so that they understand that you're hearing. People want to know that you care, that you're listening to them. That's the most important thing. So make sure you have your paperwork together. If you're in a state where you have to do that buyer rep agreement, make sure you have that handy. Here in the state of North Carolina, obviously at first substantial contact, we are to inform them about agency and the types of agency that are involved. Our goal is always to be a buyer representation for them. But that's a personal choice on your end. But that, again, you want to make sure you do that. So as you start your question, first question we always ask is to ask them to tell us a little bit about themselves. You want to listen. You want to learn things from them. Where they're moving from, family, hobbies. Just tell themselves a little bit about yourself, and then ask them, what is the reason for moving? What's the reason? Now, again, in my marketplace, a lot of it is retirement, a lot of it is second home, a lot of it is investment property, but that's different in other markets. So you want to ask them that. A question I always love, it's actually probably one of my favorite questions, is how long have you been looking? Because if somebody tells me that they've been looking for 6 months to a year, I always look at them and say, why? Why is it taking so long? So that to me is just one of those best questions. And the longer they've been looking, you want to kind of figure out, okay, why and what's happening. You want to talk with them about, what websites they're using to look at property. And then if you're like us, where you have a proprietary search engine where you can set them up on searches, you want to get them on that. But you and I both know there's hundreds of places that they're clicking buttons out there all the time. So you want to learn a little bit about that. And you want to ask them too, what has been working for them. Where they've been getting their information. That's an important thing to check on too. Obviously, another very important question, have you seen anything you've liked, and, have you written any offers on any properties? Never assume that they have not done that. So you want to make sure you've got that out there. You want to learn a little bit more about how well they know your community. Again, with our marketplace, we always ask, how many times have you been here? Tell me a little bit more about communities and things that, you're looking at from that standpoint. And then, learn a little bit more about location that they want to live in. What are things that are important to them? I'm not going to bore you with going through every single one of these questions, but the point that I'm bringing up is that you need to gather as much information as possible. I think that's where agents make a very, very big mistake when they're working with buyers, is they don't have the information they need. We believe that it is our job actually to go through this interview process with them and then find them, based on our market knowledge, 3 to 4 properties that best meet their needs, and then go out and sell them one. That's our belief. And you can only do that by going through all these types of questions. Obviously, other questions that, you want to ask is what's important about buying a home. What are non-negotiables that, you must have? What are items that you want to avoid? But then another question people fail to ask is, again, you assume, and we all know what that means, but you assume that they're just working with you. And if you've been in the business like I have for 32 years, you're going to find that sometimes that is not the case. So once you go through all that, you want to kind of recap, bedrooms, baths, locations, price range. Have they been pre-qualified? Have they, do they have an approval letter? If they're paying cash, do they have, proof of funds available? So you learn all that about that, and then what you want to do is then ask them, how, tell them about the agent. What are you looking for in me as an agent to help you? That's very, very important. You want to go through that process and kind of start setting the tone that you want to be their agent and you want to represent them in this very complicated house buying process, but then make sure that you help them out. So that's the information kind of there that we like to look at. There, as I said, there's a series of other questions that I'm not going to sit here and read every single one of them to you at this point in time. But I think in wrapping up, again, we assume that buyers understand the process. And in fact, one of the things I talk about all the time with people is I really don't care how many homes you've sold. Things have changed, processes changed, and I believe it's my job to educate them on the process. So the last thing I'll kind of really go through with is, in the home buying process in today's market, you want to talk to them about, choosing an agent that represents you. That's the very first question. And obviously, I want to be that agent for them when we do this. But, they need to choose an agent. Step number 2, they need to meet with a lender. They need to get a pre-approval letter or lock in a rate depending on the timing that they're looking at as far as purchasing a home. You need to talk with them about the things that you're going to do once they hire you. You're going to set them up on searches of criteria of homes that meet their needs based on the areas and locations that they're wanting, and that you're going to be sending them to them. And then most importantly, what we do all the time is we're looking for properties that may not be on the market at this point in time that somebody might want to sell. We call those off-market homes. We call them private sales. And where that becomes a buyer advantage is that in a private sale, obviously they're not competing with other buyers. So we feel like it's our job to be working on those types of things. But again, knowing the marketplace and finding the properties that best meets their needs and showing them to them and asking them to buy them. So again, we want to go through that process. We want to understand that, once we identify the ideal home, the perfect home when they walk in, that we're going to make an offer, and then we're going to begin negotiations. We're going to get the property accepted. And then there's going to be a time in our marketplace, and I think in most places around the country, where you're going to have a due diligence period. And I call this the period where we're doing any and all home inspections that we want to do, getting surveys if they want, just anything that the buyer wants to have done to make them feel better about purchasing that property, and talk about time frames. The average time frame in our marketplace without rushing is 30 to 45 days. So we want to let them know about that. And then also just to share with them too, that once you get your due diligence items done and you've reached your due diligence period, you're going to have that period where it seems like nothing's going on. If a lender's getting, if a buyer's getting a loan, they've got a lender who's getting an appraiser, and there's just time where it seems like there's not much going on. And that's, I think, the time when you most have to be communicating with them, just letting them know what's going on. Keeping them informed takes the anxiety away, and that is an important part of helping them get through the process. And of course, the last thing is, closing and getting them moved in. Again, it's important for you to walk them through the process. It doesn't matter how many times they've done it. They need to know, because I say this a lot too. I don't care how many properties you've bought. It is still stressful. There's still a level of anxiety, and our job is to take that away from them as much as possible. And honestly, the easiest way to do that is just to communicate with them often. So I hope that these have been some helpful tips for you. As always, as we mentioned, if you want the information on this, please let us know. If you want to sit down and meet with me to go through it, please let me know. Reach out to us. Hopefully, as I said, you found this helpful. And please let us know any other topics that you might need for us to be helping you with, and we'll address them in the upcoming months. So again, I appreciate your time in watching this. I hope it's been worthwhile, and join us again for our next episode of Scaling Up.